people have all sorts of ways of coming up with some thoughts about what church should be like. Among those people are those who want to see continuity with the beginnings of Christianity. That would be me. So I often get this question, how do you do that? There are two ways. I'm going to mention one of them very briefly and the other one a little more extensively. The brief one is Jesus utterly decentralized God's people, Jesus utterly deinstitutionalized God's people, and Jesus utterly de-ritualized God's people. And then you say, well, what's left? Because when you go to today's churches, you might say, well, they represent all three of those things, right? So what should they be representative if we're interested in continuity with the foundational, original beginnings of Christianity? And the answer is Jesus' focus is entirely on relationality according to the kinds of relational values that he lived out and that he died for. But now the other piece. During the time of Acts, that's the time after Jesus, that's the time of the letters of the New Testament. During that time, what we have is an insistence that the point of being God's people in this world is to model the kind of humanity that you get if you follow Jesus and you do that in a communal way. There's mutuality there, right? This is crucial. So we already had decentralization in those things I mentioned earlier. And now you also have this strongly mutual peace that is not administered top down, but that people actually live organically. You have something that happens at the point of people actually having their being. So mostly that is in people's houses. Not only, but that's where you mostly find it in early Christianity. Now, some have said, well, where do I go in terms of a text that illustrates that to me? I'm going to give you one now. It's Ephesians 3:10. Actually, I'm just going to read it to you real quick. His intent was that now through the church, the manifold wisdom of God should be made known to the rulers and authorities in the heavenly realms. You're seeing those words, rulers and authorities and heavenly realms, and you're probably going to fill those terms with things that come to your mind. I would encourage you not to do that. Most people will probably need help with this verse because Ephesians was written vis-a-vis, in fact, in direct contrast to a competing religious offering at the time, which was the Artemis cult, a Greek fertility goddess. And Ephesians is basically tearing down that model of humanity and establishing one that is focused on Jesus. Now, the language here, rulers, authorities, realms, this is language that comes straight out of the Artemis cult. Ephesians uses it as a way of alluding to that and saying, hey, if you're interested in that, what you really need is this being Jesus. The bottom line here is this is not about demonic forces in the air behind the clouds or a heavenly realm that's kind of God's kingdom sort of up there, turn left. No, it's got nothing to do with that. This is a frontal assault on the Artemis cult without being too explicit, because if Ephesians were too explicit, then people would pay a very heavy price for that, because the Artemis cult ruled everything in Western Asia Minor, which is where this letter went. This is clearly a theological basis here that was pretty widespread in early Christianity for thinking about church and the role of church in the world. But in order to even make this count, you have to decide, first of all, that church should be making a difference in this world. And as far as I can see, most churches actually withdraw from the world into their compounds.